Hey UK Bills Mafia, this is Christian Wade of your Buffalo Bills. This is the Red, White and Buffalo Blues, a UK Bills podcast with your hosts, Matt and Alex. Let's go Buffalo! Woo!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red, White and Buffalo Blues, UK Bills podcast, Bills news with the UK twist. Alex is back with me after so much time out, and we're also joined again by Simon Carroll from the Touchdown UK. Simon, thanks for coming back on the show.
No, I appreciate you inviting me. I always like to talk Buffalo Bills. I always like to talk NFL draft. So it's a match made in heaven, isn't it?
Yep, exactly. And we said, obviously we had a nice long talk in the pre-draft and all that, and I think none of the players that we talked about that much got drafted by the Bills. So
not one, I don't think. For all those names you were throwing at me, trying to catch me out last time I was on the show, no, not one of them came up, which was well, thank God for starters. Yeah, didn't want to embarrass myself. But no, I mean, it just goes to show that none of us know anything about the NFL draft really when it comes down to it. Or certainly we don't know what NFL teams are thinking. The one thing I thought, there's a couple of constants in this draft, and obviously there wasn't as much information this year. That was very blatant, not necessarily about the prospects, but maybe about what the teams were thinking, what they were doing. You know, obviously you've got guys over there with the sources and a lot more less leaked information this year. A lot of players drafted on athletic traits, just straight up athletic traits. Like I've got a list of all the teams drafts here, and the ones I've highlighted in blue, I didn't even scout, but they had awesome pro days. And they really went after Jason Pinnock from the Jets with the cornerback for Pittsburgh, killed it. Kenny Ngwangu, who was the running back who went to the Vikings, killed it. Nick Neiman for the Chargers is another name. Milton Williams, the defensive lineman who had the Philadelphia Eagles war room in a disarray on draft day because they wanted the guy that went before him, and they were a bit gutted, or one of them was. And Jeffrey Lurie was trying to go around and patting everyone on the back, and this guy was having none of it because they had to take Milton Williams. But
I love that. He was so angry.
He was, yeah. And I bet you know what? I bet that is the case. I mean, I don't really play fantasy football. I really don't like it, but you are compelled, aren't you? I suppose to be in a couple of leagues with your family or with like in the NFL UK community and things like that. And it does. You can feel the disappointment when the person before you takes the player you were going to take. It hurts. And just imagine that in real life, in a real sport. You know, that must be absolutely brutal. Like, I wouldn't be fist bumping anybody either.
Even down watching it, I was the same. I mean, when it came to third round, and Mellifon was on there, we didn't draft him. I was there going, "What the hell? Seriously?"
Oh, dude, Matt, I was just watching your tweets all the way through the draft, thinking, "This is the first year you got truly invested in it, and this is how it is every year, mate. What you think you know, you don't know." Like, exactly. And I was doing a similar thing with the Chargers. We had a great start to the draft as far as I was concerned, and then we started reaching a little bit on players like Trey McKitty, the Titan from Georgia. And I'm thinking, why did you go for him when Brevin Jordan's still on the board?
Yeah.
And then in 4 years' time, when Trey McKitty's Pro Bowler and Brevin Jordan's not necessarily in the league, I'll be thinking, well, maybe Tom Telesco knows a little bit more than I do about what things going on. And Brevin Jordan, who I think was my third highest tight end, ended up going 9th off the board to the Texans. So. Ultimately, I'm not, in this year, predominantly out of all years, but in general as well, we really do not know until these guys have played for a while, have we? So don't get too disappointed or too excited just yet, folks.
No, exactly.
Yeah, see, sorry. Ooh. Started talking so fast, something happened there. This is why I haven't been around lately. I've made no comments on draft picks because in 4 years' time, I can just say, yeah, I love that guy.
Yes, nice.
I never once said a bad thing about that player ever. Yeah,
no. And it'd be true.
Nailed it. Yeah.
So, the one thing I want to ask, obviously I haven't managed to ask Alex this because the two review shows I did on the first, second, and third round picks, he obviously was probably fast asleep. My luck.
I've become a morning person. I used to be up till 2 a.m. all the time because since moving here from the U.S., the sleep schedule did not adjust quickly, but now I'm locked into 6 a.m. in like 9 p.m. is my wake up and bedtime. So I did not watch any of the draft.
I just want to quickly get his quick assessment before we ask you what he thinks at least the first 3 picks.
I'm surprised that they went edge. It's almost like they took Russo in the first round, expecting Basham to be gone by their next pick, but he was there. So like, all right, let's just take both of them. That or someone surprising is going to get cut. But I think this is when I ever did make a comment. It was, we're going to draft guys who are projects, who have higher upside and higher ceilings, but lower floors. But compared to some of the guys who are the safer picks, and it's all going to come down to coaching. And that's pretty much exactly what the Bills did in the first few rounds. Take guys who are going to need to get coached. I mean, reading about Rousseau, it's like, here's a guy who didn't play edge at all in high school. He goes to Miami and then has second most sacks in college football behind Chase Young in 2019. So it's just like, there's talent there, but he's rough. So let's work on him. And that's was my expectation going in. And they didn't do anything stupid either. So that was good. We're used to that.
Apart from not draft a cornerback till round 5.
I wouldn't say that wasn't stupid. I would say that's interesting because with how much love and respect we have for Bean, we know that he knows. I mean, everybody knows that cornerback is a position of need, so they're going to address it somewhere. Do you get Sherman on a cheap deal? Can you convince guys to come here because we're awesome now, which is amazing. So, it's just I was able to not pay attention too much because it doesn't matter right now. None of the players are going to be impacting this season.
Yeah. So Simon, what do you think then overall before we go into the picks of the Bills actually draft? I know obviously Brandon Bean did say pre-draft he was looking to draft and develop on there. Do you see where he actually went with it, and obviously the players that he picked?
I would say certainly after the first 2 edge rushes, you can tell that it's all about upside. I mean, the 2 tackles, both of those guys. I mean, we interviewed Tommy Doyle, the defensive tackle from Miami of Ohio, and for the touchdown, we were very high on him. He could be a starting right tackle in the NFL as far as we're concerned. But of course, play for a smaller school, there'll be a bit more of a learning curve as he jumps up to the NFL. So that makes sense. And of course, Spencer Brown, he played FCS football for Northern Iowa. I didn't know much about him. I told Matt last podcast, the FCS guys, we tend to leave to Rebecca Rennie because she's just so good with them. She's an expert when it comes to the small schools. But I got into his tape literally a few days before the draft and I was sold. I thought he was brilliant. I mean, he's complete and utter traits. He's highly athletic. He's a beast of a man. I mean, I assume you guys have seen him jump through the table by now. They're definitely upside guys. There's no 2 ways about it. The first 2, I'd expect them to be relatively impactful from the start. I know you're quite deep there. No, obviously you've got Jerry Hughes, you've got Mario Addison, you've got AJ Epinesa, you've got Efe Abada. You've got some names, haven't you? Edge rusher. That just looking at I did a little bit of research before I came on. The Bills, they're $3.7 million under the cap, and they've still got to pay the rookies yet. They've got the second least rostered amount of players in the NFL, which means, whilst obviously it's stands at 78, so obviously you're cutting a load of guys before you get to the 53, but it means obviously that you've got probably further as far to go as any team has to save some money. Then you've got Mario Addison, who if you cut him post 1st June, you can save $5.3 million. Jerry Hughes is the bigger one. You can save all of his cap. There's 0 dead cap space if you cut him after the 1st of June. I don't know if you will or you won't. I just think I don't think they were going to be dictated to Brandon Bean necessarily by need, because I think we discussed it in the pod. I thought personally, my opinion was that cornerback was your biggest need going into the draft. But we did say at the time nothing was really that prohibitive that you had to take one. Like we saw guys having to take people, didn't we? Yeah. We see it every year. I don't think the Bills were in that situation, and I think it showed. Doubling down an edge was interesting. I think the Colts did exactly the same thing, didn't they? They took Kwity Paye and then Daewoo Yingbo out of Vanderbilt in the first and second rounds. And I think it's quite striking the similarities between the 2 teams, both very well-run franchises who put a value on, certain quality of players, certain temperaments, certain mindsets, and obviously, value overall when it comes to the draft. So I wouldn't panic if it was the Bills. I mean, obviously, it wasn't you've covered every single dot, maybe. I mean, the quarterback position, obviously, is something that you might want to look at in free agency. But there's so many teams out there. There always seems to be an answer coming up later in the draft. It wouldn't surprise me if there's, there's going to be big names cut now. One of those could be a cornerback, and one of them could end up in Buffalo if it's a fit. But like Rashad Wildgoose, who was a great name, absolutely fantastic name. Yeah, to draft him just based on that. But also Warren G's son Elijah Griffin is an undrafted free agent.
Yeah,
a bit of Hollywood coming to Buffalo. I mean, I think it was a great draft. There's certainly a lot of upside anyway. The edges obviously will take center stage. I don't know how much you'll see of him, but I do think they can make an impact straight away. Certainly Gregory Rousseau, obviously, is a production machine. And then Carlos Basham, I've not seen a guy who's more Buffalo Bills or, kind of prospect in general. He's a bigger defensive end. He's got positional versatility. He can play as a linebacker, defensive end. He can, even if you kick out your sub packages of 3-4, he can play a lineup as a 7-tech as a defensive end on a 3-man front. It's not necessarily rushing the passer. He's got a diverse skill set, and he's a big guy, which we know that Brandon Bean likes when they took AJ Epinesa, a very similar kind of prospect last year. So the best thing about I think we said it on the last one, is that you've got a direction. You can trust the people who are running your franchise now, which is something that not every team in the NFL can say. In fact, probably most of the teams can't say. So any doubts you have about this draft, I think you've probably got to take them with a pinch of salt and really trust the guys, because they know what they're doing. And to my man, I've highlighted all these names on this draft. I won't go through them until you ask me, but every single one of them pretty much on that list, maybe Wild Goose aside, I would thought was really good value at the point you took them.
I mean, obviously looking at Russo on there, obviously 6'7". I think there's a tweet going out there. He's the size of 2.5 Isaiah McKenzie's. That's how tall he is. And there's also
that poor guy keeps getting picked on for his size. Look, I'm not big either. I'm like 5'6". Like let's cut it with the short people jokes. All right, Isaiah McKenzie. I feel for you, bro.
And then there was a shot of Brandon Sean McDermott shaking his hand, and you could just see him looking up.
Yeah.
So, how you doing, son?
Yeah, no, that's a man child. He's young and huge. So that's pretty exciting to see if we could, develop him properly, right?
But I know his testing, there were good sides of his testing on there, in the 82nd percentile for his dash, his wingspan in the top 95% and all that. Is there the worry there, Simon, of just having 1 year, 1 year wonder almost, you could put it there, with 15.5 sacks after only just playing 15 games? Obviously, we know now the reason why he sat out 2020. Obviously, it was because his mother was a COVID nurse and wanted to protect her and the family. So is there a bit of is it worth the first round to actually get him just based on that 1 year in 2019?
Well, I mean, there's always worry whenever you have a 1 year production. Really, it's a prospect, but I mean, sometimes you just got to go with that gamble. And I think if you a franchise as secure as the Bills are right now, and in a good position the Bills are, they have more leeway with those kind of takes. They have the right now to be able to make those picks and bank on the upside. Gregory Rousseau, obviously long and lean, very quick, and the wingspan is key. Obviously, if you saw a lot of his sacks, a lot of his production in that 2019 season, a lot of people saying it's right place, right time. I would argue it's his God-given traits were a big factor in that as well, and whether he's bringing those to Buffalo, isn't he? So
yeah,
I mean, he's a very talented player. There's a little bit of concern, not just because of his production, but because when he was not there and they brought in Quincy Roche from Temple, and the guy didn't miss a beat. Jalen Phillips comes over, doesn't miss a beat. Then you start thinking, well, hang on, are all these guys really good? And Miami just hit on 3 first round edge rushers, essentially. I know Quincy Roche fell down, and for good reason, to the 6th round. But, are these all really talented players, or is it just the scheme they're in? I suppose you could worry about that a little bit. But I was very high on Rousseau. I know Rebecca Rennie touchdown was very high, and I think Ollie was as well. Hodgkinson from PFN. So it's just a balance. I think you've got to take, if you were just forget about the 1 year. If you just study games as much as possible individually, in a microcosm, you do try and take a spectrum of games from different seasons and things like that. And obviously, if the stats stand up through 2 or 3 seasons, the worry completely disappears. But every single draft pick is a risk, and like I say, you guys are obviously in a great position to take that risk, because if Gregory Rousseau doesn't pan out, but Basham does, no one's going to remember Rousseau if that happens. That's just the way it goes. I mean, and also, obviously, you've got the talent on the roster, and if it takes him time to acclimate to the NFL, so be it. You've got Jerry Hughes, you've got Mario Edison, you've got Effie Abad, you've got AJ Epinesa. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
For Rousseau, let's play a little what if Magic 8-Ball. If he was in the draft last year with his explosive 2019, where do you think he would have went?
Well, that's an interesting one. He probably would have gone. I mean, he would have gone higher than AJ Epinesa, purely because I think he would have gone first round. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why he would have gone any lower a year earlier, if you know what I mean, because I think the year off probably was detrimental to his draft stock, if anything. Yeah. So you could say you got yourself some kind of value in that regard as well. But that's a very difficult projection. Obviously, you're up against different prospects. There's no Chase Young in this draft, for instance. So there's a lot of different aspects in play. But I think he's a first round talent. I do. I think it would have been the case in 2019. I think it's the case in 2020. So it's not either way. The kid can play football as far as I can tell.
That's interesting, Matt. Would you say that we were a little disappointed by Epinesa in his rookie season? Underwhelmed, maybe?
A little bit, but then he actually did start putting a bit of weight on towards the end of the year, and then he actually did start to flash a lot of potential in there.
So if Rousseau ends up better than Epinesa, I mean, it'll be like kind of worth it still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because there's so many guys in the room now. I mean, if Epinesa flames out and we have Rousseau and Basham going forward, who's going to care, right?
I mean, the other thing, and I assume some of you probably agree with this, is obviously Brandon Bean came out and said that another reason they chose Rousseau was actually that his versatility, because he's actually played inside and got a good pass rushing arsenal in there. I mean, majority of his sacks came all over the defensive line. So you've got the versatility in there. And I just want to know, do you agree with the comp I found of him, which would be a Carlos Dunlap or Jason Pierre-Paul type comparison?
Well, the Carlos Dunlap one makes sense to me, purely because Carlos Dunlap moves around a bit as well. And he's obviously a bigger guy who can, step inside after that interior pass rush in the sub package, wherever he's been, be it Cincinnati or Seattle. And Rousseau, very versatile, much like Boogie Basham is, or Carlos Basham, as a lot of people call him. This is obviously something that the Bills, put high emphasis on, and I think they should do too, because nowadays you're in your sub package almost as much as you are in in your regular scheme, and when that's the case, you don't want your best players coming off the field because they can't fit anywhere else but outside a 4-3 edge rusher. They can't play linebacker because they're too big and they're too small to kick inside and offer that defensive tackle role. So he can do that, and that is key. And I think to some extent, it will be interesting to see what they do with him. I think it also means that they could possibly use him a lot more on third down in his first season, doesn't it? So you obviously have your two guys, if they're staying. If they're keeping Hughes and Addison, they'll probably be your first and second down bread and butter guys. And then you bring in Rousseau and you don't know where he's going to line up, and what he can achieve, or where, just find a mismatch with his size and length and arm span. It makes things, just another card in the deck, so to speak, another weapon to your arsenal that not necessarily every team has. And this is the beauty of having now a real solid roster, is that you can take the chance on these players and they can provide you bonus that some teams just do not have that luxury of having. If you're the Saints and you had to go and get yourself a cornerback at some point in this draft, or, you need one of those quarterbacks, and you had to, like the Bears had to, mortgage next two drafts to go and get a quarterback. They needed a quarterback. It's that simple. And what he offers them is a rookie quarterback, and that's it. He's not giving them anything more than a lot of other teams already have. Yeah. They're catching to keep up, whereas the Buffalo Bills are now, and there's other teams as well. The Cleveland Browns, very similar thing. They had just sat back, let talent fall to him, found pieces that they can move around, like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the second round. They could utilize him all over the place. Similar deal with the Buffalo Bills here, I think, with Rocha, and to some extent Basham as well.
Yeah. So do you have anything to add, Alex, before we move on to Boogie?
I just really enjoy it when non-Bills fans say that we're like all set. It's the first time in my lifetime, my adult lifetime, that I'm hearing praise, and I'm just like kind of like the Bills at the draft. I'm just sitting back and just enjoying it.
So with obviously with our second pick, it was Boogie Basham. Again, what I like about that is that obviously again it's his versatility. He's called himself a chess piece, and interesting to know that he was their best player available. We know Brandon Bean actually said he was going best player available. They actually planned to trade out to that pick to an NFC team if Basham wasn't on the board on there. But it's what I like about what he's done. There's the versatility because he's kicked into inside to 3-tech, has had has a sack and some hits on Trevor Lawrence, and we've got to play the Jags this year, so it's going to be.
So you put 2 and 2 together and assumed he's going to do the same.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Naturally, yeah.
But what about him? I mean, he's good. He's strong against the run. He does have that pass rushing ability. Was 61 that sort of area, the ceiling really for him?
No, I think he could have gone higher. I actually think Carlos Basham could have challenged bottom end of the first round if there was more of a run on edge rushers. We saw it got a bit of a slow start, didn't it, in the first round, or top of the second round. No problem at all. I thought it was excellent value again. He's one of those guys who brings his lunchbox to work every day. He's not messing around. He's full on motor from the first play to the last, complete ball of intensity. I think he got a little bit big in his final season. I think he was, and I think that was because he was trying to show that he can play multiple positions on the defensive line. I think I preferred him when he was a little bit quicker, but I mean we're talking minute details here. Buffalo will have exactly a plan for what size and what condition they want him to come back to training camp, so it's not a problem. But he's that unnatural blend of size and speed, isn't he, that you just don't see from edge rushers. Not necessarily got that much dip compared to maybe Russo. He won't flatten the curve, won't flatten the edge necessarily as much. He'll more beat people with his power and his pace, kind of thing. That's his deal. Reminds me a whole lot of Cameron Jordan for the Saints defensive end, a guy who not necessarily everyone talks about a lot, or he's never like defensive MVP or anything like that. But every season he's racking up double-digit sacks. He's causing issues that and he's obviously benefiting the rest of his defense just by being an absolute pain in the neck to that offensive line, and they always have to account for him. And I think that's the kind of play that Boogie Basham really is. The speed off the snap is my favorite thing about him, and I think that's possibly why I wanted to see him keep his weight off a little bit. The tape, I noticed a little difference in the tape between 2019 and 2020, but it's nothing to be concerned about. And I honestly think that whether or not it's this year or next year that he comes to the fore, he's a player that Buffalo Bills fans will really like. When you see just the intensity he plays at, it's the kind of play that you want on your team, and certainly a team like Buffalo who love those guys, and I can imagine. I never expected, Buffalo to go out and get someone like Azeez Ojulari, this really stupidly, insanely quick, almost like nuts edge rusher who you line up at a wide 9 and he's going to electrify teams by how fast he is. That's not Buffalo style. You've got to bring more than just that. He's not. This guy's not a designated pass rusher. He's going to be someone who's on the field, like you say. He can defend the run. So whether or not it's this season or next, I think he's a big impact player for Buffalo at some point.
So it sounds like you're saying that Rousseau and Basham are two different types of edge rusher?
Similar. Well, I mean, Rousseau's leaner and longer. They're both versatile, which I would consider quite similar. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the way they play, Basham is all effort, all intensity. He's quick. Not necessarily he's got good length, but not like Gregory Rousseau windmill arms length. Rousseau is very good as well in terms of, and he gives good effort. The thing I like about Rousseau is how happy he looked to be going to Buffalo. I mean, that must have been refreshing for you guys, because it's not something you see, is it, in recent years? But no, I do think they are slightly different kind of prospects. Boogie just feels like that bigger guy, strong guy, probably a bit better against the run, to be fair, than Gregory is. But both very versatile and can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking potentially on third downs, on the passing downs. You're getting like Jerry Hughes, Rousseau, Basham, maybe Epinesa, or that sort of combination, just pure pass rushing on the on third downs, and you just don't know who you're going to be able to block. So I kind of see why they double dipped on defensive ends so they can try and pull that out. But also you're potentially looking at another maybe year or two on Jerry Hughes and Addison. So they're obviously building for the future on there.
I think one of those two guys may go, unless they're really not sold on Epinesa and he just kind of like flames out as a rookie. I honestly think one of those guys might go because the numbers just don't make sense now. I mean, F.A. Abada's not getting any snaps, is he? Not in that room, I don't think. It's just nature of the beast. This is how it happens. Every veteran watches the draft carefully and sees who the competition is going to be. It's why quarterbacks get so upset if they feel like their position is in question. It's just amassed a little bit more in other positions because there's normally two of them, isn't it? Like two edge rushers, two cornerbacks, two receivers, and it's a bit more of a melting pot. And obviously, you can have different guys do different things, and that's important to production on a defense as well. So, the numbers don't quite work there. Obviously, you need to save some money as well to pay all these guys. But yeah, I mean, you said this is the whole idea. You go into a draft hoping that you don't have to reach. You could just go best player available. You're not really pigeonholed into one direction. Then coming out of the draft, you go into your rookie camps, you see how good they are, and you think, right, well, these guys are ready to start now. Then we can maybe move on from one of the veterans. And if you look at them and go, actually, no, they're going to take a year. Then they're going to have to stick with them, aren't they? So that's the way they're going to roll with it, I think. But in terms of as a group, the edge rushers, I think, yeah, there's enough versatility in there to be able to do a lot of different things. And yeah, just keep it fresh, I suppose. It's not particularly an easy division. I know you guys did really well last year and took it, but the Patriots are coming back. There's no doubt about that. The Jets had a fantastic draft. And the Dolphins are a team who've been not quite as well run as the Buffalo Bills. I'll give you that, but they're doing well for themselves as well. So this is no easy division. It won't be an easy schedule for Buffalo. So the more guys you've got in the room, the better.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins, they just need to iron out some things. I mean, they could have won a lot more games than they did last year.
Yeah.
Thinking about that the defensive line room, just like if I'm Epinesa or F.A. Obata, they're like, why are we here? What did you just do to us? Kind of thing. Where like Hughes is like, I mean, I have a year or two left. I'm good. I know I'm a starter, but like Addison, what was it, Matt? Refresh my memory. Did he restructured, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah, so
restructured.
That's an interesting one, and then it's just such a big room. Something is going to change there, so that's just interesting to see what that happens going forward.
Yeah. So this is round 3. This is the one I like. I like we went offensive tackle because we pretty much one injury away from having Bobby Hart as either our left or right tackle on there. So I think pretty much all of Buffalo was rejoicing when they actually took Spencer Brown. And I mean, just reading about him and obviously what he is. I mean, 6'8", 311 pounds, bench presses 500 pounds, squats 600 pounds.
I did that yesterday. Hey, I had a good question about the second round. Sorry, just thought of it. Sorry. Because taking edge at both spots, possibly not what we needed to have done. We talked about corner at the top of the show. Let's say we know Basham's there at 2. Is there a corner at 1 that we should have taken? And or with Rousseau at 1, is there a corner at 2 that we should have taken?
Well, there's no doubt about it. There'll be corners there at number 1 if you wanted him. I mean, the Chargers took Asante Samuel early in the second round, who's going to be a fantastic. And I would think he's a perfect fit in the Buffalo Bills kind of very sticky, aggressive, Josh Norman style cornerback. But there's no guarantees, is there? Like I said earlier, I thought Carlos Basham could have gone way earlier than 61. I thought he could have gone maybe in like the 40s. At which point, if you've taken Asante Samuel in round 1, then you've got neither of you guys, have you? So obviously, not only were they happy with the quality of Gregory Rousseau, I think they just thought we're not missing out on the opportunity to have one of these really effective pass rushers. And when then they found that the Basham was there again, 2020 hindsight and all that is not, it's great, but no one was to know, was he? But then at that point you make a decision, don't you? Do we stick to our board and take the other guy who we also thought was brilliant, or do we go for a different position just because we want a different position? And I think it's a testament to the character of the Bills front office and the state of your roster that you're able to do that.
Good point.
Yeah. So I mean, again, with Spencer Brown, I mean, obviously we know what he can actually what he can do in the workout, but obviously in high school he was tight end, played defensive line, played basketball and baseball. I mean, you've got a guy who's pretty much an athletic freak on there. I mean, ideally you can see that he has a very physical style and likes to really force that opponent down and finish the play. What can you see in there? Do you see him as potentially a swing tackle, which Brandon Bean says they can develop him at? And do you see him being just solely a right tackle to start off with?
No, I think he is a swing tackle. I think if you look well, I thought you were going to, when you listen off all those sports, and I thought you were going to say, oh, he was a wrestler. And I thought, oh, here we go. The classic one for Sean McDermott. This guy he's a beast. He's massive. He's fast, but he's raw. So a swing tackle is a perfect opportunity for him. I mean, I took a look at your both Williams, both Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams. They re-upped, didn't they, this year? They're going nowhere. They're your starters. It's that simple. So Spencer Brown is going to come in. He's going to be a swing tackle, and to a lesser extent, Tommy Doe's going to come in. He's going to be a backup too. He's going to be the guy who has to come in if both of them go down. And I think that's a really healthy situation now for Buffalo. The offensive line, I think you could possibly kick one of them inside a little bit if you need to, because obviously my only concern really with the offensive line in Buffalo is Mitch Morse's health. He struggles with concussions. He can't stay on the field. As fantastic a free agent signing as he has been for you guys. We saw John Feliciano move inside to center, surprisingly, in November last season. I think if the worst comes to worst and Morse can't play, Feliciano moves inside, then you could possibly line one of these guys up as guard as well. I'm not quite sure how they pan that out like that, because I've not seen any tape of either of these guys having to play guard. I know Tommy Doe can play across the line, purely from the interview that he gave with my colleague Ollie Hodgkinson, which should be interesting. Whereas the first guys, I think they're looking, a pathway to the future. These guys was about depth in your offensive line. It's the one position, like you guys say, playing Bobby Hart on the offensive line. It's just it's not right. It's not right. Yeah. Is it? In 2021, it's not right when you think about it. He wasn't good in Cincinnati. He's not going to be good in Buffalo. Yeah. So now you've got depth. I mean, when was it? 2019, you drafted Cody Ford.
Yeah.
He's looking like a guard. That's fine. Yeah. Not a problem. Second round pick, healthy. If he's good at guard, play him at guard. Now you've got a stacked offensive line. I think this is very important. Obviously, you've got you've got a franchise quarterback now. He needs to be protected. Not only that, he's very mobile. It means that you need an athletic offensive line yourself to be able to cope with that. We've seen other offensive lines in the NFL struggle to cope with quarterbacks who don't mind going off script, off structure, like the Seattle Seahawks offensive line forever gets lambasted for not being able to protect Russell Wilson. But to some extent, Russell Wilson's the architect of his own downfall by the way that he likes to break contain. The better offensive lines, like the ones that the Chiefs have had in recent years and things like that, they can adapt to that. They can, because they're very athletic pieces on that offensive line. And if the Buffalo Bills have now started to add those, like we just seen with Spencer Brown, who can move, he really can move. I think that just makes it so much more easier for them to protect the prized asset, which it is, because I assume at some point we're going to be talking about the fact you didn't draft a running back. Yeah. There's more pressure than ever on Josh Allen now, which I think he's done really a great job in handling, to be quite honest. I mean, in his first 2 years, he looked a little bit shaky at key points, but this next season, obviously, to take that next step from last year, absolutely exploded. So protect him at all costs. If that means doubling up at every position on the offensive line, almost go for it. I thought it was a fantastic move. They also signed a guy from Fresno State, which I quite like, as a free agent called Cyrus Tuitel. He can move too. He's not big, but he can move. And I think it kind of shows that what they're planning on doing really is getting a bit more quicker on that offensive line and being able to adapt on the fly to maybe some unscripted plays.
Yeah, because I mean, they've got he had a RAS score. I don't know if you really look into that much of 10. Tommy Doyle 9.98.
There you go. You're seeing it now, aren't you?
Like that. But it's good. I mean, let's say everyone probably seen the video of him jumping through the table and actually getting very rowdy after that. And then I'm trying to find the tweet on there about dissing Tom Brady or something like that. I'm trying to.
Oh, good man. After my own heart.
Oh, here we go. This is gonna, he signed up, hasn't he? Well, no one's benefited better more at this draft than Kentley Platt, who runs the Relative Athletic Score website, because this is a draft where people were drafted purely on athletic traits because they couldn't trust the tape as much, because they couldn't speak to the prospects as much. So what's the one constant all the time? If you can run, you can run. If you can, if you've got good size, that's like, you can't teach those things. You can't change those things to some extent. So it definitely was a key focus for Buffalo, but not only Buffalo. Certainly Las Vegas Raiders was another team that drafted on traits. The Chargers did to some extent. The Vikings did to some extent. So, but yeah, I think that's dead smart idea for the Buffalo Bills. And I was really pleased to see those two guys, because not household names really, Tommy Doyle or Spencer Brown, but Buffalo Bills fans will come to like those guys. I'll tell you that now.
I mean, when you mentioned the Raiders drafting based off, numbers, like they really only ever used to look at speed, So being compared to them in the draft, doesn't make me feel good. But
Oh, apologies.
based off this one, and who was that god awful wide receiver they drafted a few years ago? That was
Darius Hayward-Bay
Yeah,
in the first round. Drafted him because of his 40-yard dash time. Class. That was one of Al Davis's last drafts.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so,
I mean, that's taking it too far.
Yes, for sure.
No, the one last thing I want to say, there was also another video of Spencer Brown actually doing a box jump from sitting down, jumping 54 inches.
Oh, what?
That's explosiveness there.
I can't even raise my foot 54 inches.
68, 6'8", over 300 pounds, just box jumped 54 inches, and he was sitting down to start with.
I'll tell you what, we've not even mentioned Jack Anderson, who you drafted late on day 3. Now, I love Jack Anderson as a day 3 pick. I do an article every year called my day 3 dream team. And he basically picks a player for each position on offense and on defense, which you can find on the touchdown, cheeky little plug. But he was my right guard. He's only played right guard for Texas Tech, so he's not got much versatility, but this is a big, big boy who can move. And again, it just fits the same principles, doesn't it? And I think that's another bit of depth. He can come in. If he comes into the team, he's playing right guard. So someone like Cody Ford would have to move around, which I don't think would be a problem for Cody because he's moved from tackle to guard himself anyway, hasn't he? So, but yeah, another interesting piece and another, obviously focus on the trenches from the Bills, which I wouldn't have said they were a problem, but it's what the best teams do anyway. And,
exactly.
Certainly if you're not in desperate need for any other positions, go for it.
I mean, obviously we got in round 5, we got Marcus Stevenson. I love that pick. He's got a kick returner to replace Andre Roberts and maybe take over eventually down the line. Cole Beasley and Isaiah McKenzie get a 3-for-1 almost with him. I think I don't know about you. Is it probably the most underrated wide receiver?
Well, I was a bit gutted the Buffalo took Marcus Stevenson because there was and nothing to do with you guys, but there was this little run in the middle of the draft where the Rams took Tutu Atwell and the Seahawks took Dwayne Eskridge, and then the Cardinals took Rondale Moore. And I thought, oh my God, this NFC West is just taking all the track star wide receivers out there. And I thought, I really want the 49ers to take Marcus Stevenson and just complete the set. But what I really liked about the Marcus Stevenson pick is that we discussed on last time I was on your show that you lost Andre Roberts last season. He was one of the best special teams returners in the NFL. I thought it was a sneaky big loss for you guys. And Isaiah McKenzie is obviously still penciled in to be the punt returner and kick returner, but this is a guy who can do that job. He shouldn't fall through the cracks. I'm glad he went mid-rounds, really. I'm quite chuffed about that because I thought he could. He's a bit undersized, 182 pounds. He's 5'10". That's what kick returners are. But also his speed. I think you've also, even though you replaced John Brown with Manny Sanders, it's not a like for like, is it? Manny Sanders is more of a possession receiver and one of my favorite players in the NFL. But if you want that guy who's going to take a top of the defense, now you've got him again. So he's fulfilling 2 roles. He's a bit raw, but when it comes to just basically sticking your foot in the ground and absolutely duking a defender out of the cleats and creating separation at ease, this is the kind of kid we're talking about. And he's dangerous with the ball in his hand. I think he was one of my favorite picks. It really was. Followed very closely by your next pick, DeMar Hamlin, who, again, made my day 3 dream team as a safety, a very versatile safety, again, full of athletic traits. I think he can play box safety. I think he can play single high free safety. I think he can play that split safety role. He can do a lot of different things. I think if I was to choose, I'd probably put him as a split safety a little bit further back, maybe have the game play out in front of him so he can click and close on the football, show his speed off. But yeah, really, really pleased with that pick. And I know Roy Daniels from the touchdown loved that kid. He scouted him well. I think he even had him going to the Buffalo Bills in his he does a perfect picks series of all the 32 teams. And I think he had him going to the Bills actually, which is quite a cool little symmetry there. But yeah, honestly, I thought your draft got better as it went on because it's obviously the talent's at the top, value looking for at the bottom, and I think you hit on a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy to think because so on a good team, there's so few roster spots to make 53. When you draft, we traded down, which is crazy, so we got more guys. You're saying all these things, good things about guys who, I'm not used to that. Like, so not everybody that gets drafted makes the roster, but we're saying good stuff about 6th-round draft picks.
Well, yeah, the thing about that is I say good stuff about a lot of prospects.
Okay.
And it's not just to hedge my bets, it's because it's not necessarily just about the prospects, it's about the fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing. And if you can understand what they're trying to do, your team, then it goes a long way to buying in. We just talked about the Las Vegas Raiders drafts, and sometimes it's very difficult to tell what they're up to. They selected Alex Leatherwood in the first round, and a lot of people got on the backs because he probably was available a lot later in the draft. Mike Mayock came on the NFL Network afterwards and explained himself, and you can understand his thought process. They're very much keyed in on certain guys. They drafted 3 safeties in the draft, and I know Divine Diablo will be moved to the rover role under Gus Bradley, but it's harder to see what their plan is based on going from year to year to year. It's harder to see what their plan is. Whereas with this, every single draft you go, right, they've done that because of this. They picked this particular guy because he can do this, or he can do a lot of different things in your case. They've all selected all 3 of these linemen plus the free agent linemen. They're all movers. It makes sense. Marcus Stevenson fills your one potential hole you had on special teams. DeMar Hamlin, athletic on the back end, and you've got some guys on that back end now who are probably getting a little bit like the Micah Hydes, the Jordan Poyers, all of a sudden you're thinking a bit for the future, you have that luxury. So whilst I might be a little bit, because I watch these guys a lot, and me and Rebecca Rennie were talking about this, you do kind of get a bit excited to see where they go, and you just want the best for them, and you hope they all fulfill the potential. They're not going to. But sitting here right now and seeing how they fit into your team, it does make sense. And because of that, you can get excited about it, I think, regardless of what round we're talking about, the players, it's just about value at that point and seeing a pathway forward.
Yeah. So obviously the last guy we talked about drafted, the guy with say the best name in the NFL, and obviously with his number for Buffalo Bills fans, he's chosen number 32, and I think there's a tweet on there of obviously it was OJ Simpson's old number, and someone had a little tweet on there, Wild Goose 32, leading on the Wild Goose chase and all that. Do you see him?
These guys aren't even old enough to know,
Well, most people will probably know, but do you see him as an outside guy that can challenge a Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, or is he more predominantly like a slot guy?
He's relatively physical, so he could play slot. I think he's more filling out your cornerback room, if I'm quite honest. I mean, I watched 2 games of Rashard Wild Goose, and they were fine. The Wisconsin cornerbacks, you don't hear a lot of them going. Wisconsin's primarily defensive line running backs. That's your kind of lot from Wisconsin. That's the kind of football they play. But he had some movement to him. He's quite a physical guy. I think ultimately they probably want him to play outside, maybe offer an alternative to your outside guys. Levi Wallace, your Dane Jacksons. In fact, actually, Dane Jackson's quite a good comp to him, I suppose, in that they're a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical. Again, that's possibly the only pick of your whole lot. I struggle to pinpoint what they're trying to do with that. They'll know better than me. He wasn't a guy scouted heavily, Rashard Wild Goose. I've got to be honest. The name is fantastic. Yeah, you're right. You might sell some jerseys at the very least, just based on that. But there's quite a few good names in this draft. I'm about to jump on the Collapsing Pocket podcast after this with my colleagues, and one of Sam Aykroyd's favorite things to do is to go through the draft and pick out all the greatest names. No, I guarantee Wild Goose will be coming up on the podcast in the next hour. But if I'm quite honest, I don't know where he fits for Buffalo. Not because he's different to what you're doing or it doesn't make sense, just because it's hard for me to say based on what I've seen what he could do. But he does bring that physicality, I think, which is kind of expected from a Bills cornerback on the outside. They are kind of sticky, aren't they? They're given a little bit of leeway to be grabby and things like that. I think it's part and parcel of the mantra of that defense, certainly that secondary. So that from that perspective, it makes sense in terms of his future. Sorry, can't help you out on that one.
Yeah, sorry, that's no problem.
Defeated.
Yeah. Yes. So have you ranked all the teams' drafts?
No, I have not. I don't do that.
No? Okay.
I have. If you want a little spoiler for the podcast later that I'm about to do, we are going to go through some drafts and things like that. I've highlighted some teams. I love some drafts, like ultra love some drafts. Like the Jets, I think is a fantastic draft. It really is. You ain't got anything to worry about for the next couple of years, but that is a ground setting draft, which is they've got a good. Joe Douglas is a very good GM. He's from the Baltimore Ravens School of operations, and you can see it. He took him maybe a year and a half to clean house, and now they're setting the standards, and that's the way he goes. The Washington football team, I thought, had a fantastic draft. The Carolina Panthers blew me away how well they did to trade back, and keep getting talent that fell down the board. I thought it was fantastic. The Broncos had a good draft, which is a bit annoying for me. My Chargers had a good draft, I thought. The Vikings, again, they had a lot of picks, and they did well. But these are only names that I think were good. So, again, got to bear in mind that in a year that's even harder than most to predict, and I'm not always like, I'm probably got a less than 50-50 rating which is the apparently par for the course for most scouts nowadays in the NFL. 50,
well, let's schedule this day in 3 years, and then we'll review this conversation.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, we're going to talk about the guys we talked about last year as well. If you like, in 2 years, I can't even remember who we talked about. But that's the benefit of being an NFL draft scout. Everyone's forgotten what you said 12 months later when you talk about the next guys. So you can say whatever you like, can't you? I think it's the idea. But yeah, the Lions are a great draft. The Cardinals, the Falcons. I thought I like Kyle Pitts as a pick, but I thought they might have missed the opportunity to get their quarterback of the future there. After that, I thought they absolutely smashed the draft. And the Chicago Bears, because the Chicago Bears have never had a franchise quarterback in Super Bowl era. They haven't. I know they won a Super Bowl in '85, but it was nothing to do with a quarterback. They've never had.
Rex Grossman was all right.
He took them to the Super Bowl. He didn't win one. It was McMahon, wasn't it? Who won it in '85?
He was awful.
But they did what they needed to do, and they got themselves what I consider to be a franchise quarterback. He was my second best quarterback in this draft, Justin Fields. I think how he fell to 11 behind the other guys was a disgrace. But
Kyle Brandt's happy, so.
Is he? Oh, do you watch Good Morning Football? I mean, I saw him wearing the Bears jersey and out of the corner of my eye. I
believe that's his team, right?
I know it's Kay Adams' team.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, your draft's up there, guys. I mean, it wasn't.
All right.
It might not have been as splashy for me.
Yeah.
But
because, like you said, the needs, right? Like this team doesn't need a splashy draft because it's for later.
It's not the Bills' MO to be splashy. You're not going to go and trade up, mortgage the house for a guy you don't need. The Saints would do that. Yeah. The Saints will do that. They probably haven't in the past have done that and haven't needed to do that. There was a story last year of Tommy Stevenson, a quarterback, who they really wanted because he was like the next Taysom Hill, and they just really wanted him. And they was coming to the end of the draft, and he was going to be a free agent, and they were trying to sign him. He said, "Look, I've given my word to the Panthers. I will sign with them." And they offered him like twice as much money. He said, "No, I've already said I will sign with them, and I'm a man of my word." So the Saints traded a six-round pick this season, just gone, to move back into the 7th round to take him, so that he couldn't sign as a free agent with the Panthers. So they'll do things like that just because they want guys, and they didn't need him. He's not even on the team anymore. Yeah. He's not even there. So this is the kind of, you don't do silly things like that. And yeah, when it comes to the draft, I guarantee people might even put you as losers just because you drafted 2 edges and 2 tackles and not got your cornerback maybe they all thought you should get. And the running back we haven't even discussed. You've not got this splash running back which everyone assumed you needed. I don't think you do need.
I don't either. Yeah, I mean, it would be a different conversation wholly if we traded up for Etienne. There was a rumor about that. So good thing.
No, I wouldn't have signed off on that. I wouldn't have allowed that. I wouldn't have let that slide because it's not. It's just a waste of resources. It's not something. Running backs in general, as sad as it is for running backs, there's more of them. We can see it all the way through this draft. And even if you just look at the Cowboys free agent signings, they signed 3 running backs I think can run in the NFL. Yeah. So they're there to be taken. You guys didn't take one. So, but that doesn't matter. I think you've got 2 running backs who can move the football, and also
and also we don't run the ball. So
it's not your MO. So whilst other teams might not be able to fathom that, and you have some teams like the Steelers who have huge amounts of needs in that team because they're coming to the end of the cycle, and they should have re-upped on their offensive line and the defensive line and the secondary. And then they went and took Najee Harris in the 1st round, of course. And I love Najee Harris.
What are you doing?
I love Najee Harris, and he's a brilliant fit in Pittsburgh. But is it the biggest need you got? If you're in a team that, luckily you guys, I mean, we said it throughout this podcast, it's a theme. You guys don't need to do anything. And because of that, you just keep building, and it's one more brick in the wall, isn't it? And hopefully this time it's one more step. And you're in a Super Bowl, and that's the difference, isn't it? So you're there, you're ready. You don't need to make big splash moves. Some teams look at it and go, it's a meh draft. I think it's a very, very solid draft, and I think the quieter drafts are sometimes the better ones.
Good point.
So one quick thing, because I know obviously you've got your own show to go to in a sec. Just want to quickly go over just some of the undrafted and just see any of them may potentially making an impact, making a late push on there. Obviously, we've got Elijah Griffin, we signed Nick McLeod, Quinton Morrison, Trey Walker, Tariq Thompson, a safety, and Cyrus Tutelli on there. Is there anyone on there that really can make a potential push, be a very under the radar push for a 53-man spot?
Oh, Quinton Morris is getting in your team. He is. He's a blocking tight end. I imagine him and Tommy Sweeney. You've got Jacob Hollister as well. Thinking about it, he's the guy who I would expect to get into your team. He's got Buffalo Bills DNA running through him. He can block and he will move people. So I think he's in there. Elijah Griffin's a big name. Everyone got excitement because he is Warren G's son. There's like a big, massive thing about it, I think, before the draft.
Snoop Dogg's godson as well.
But I did expect him to be drafted, so there's that. And obviously, considering your cornerback position, maybe room for another guy. You could expect him to. I like Tariq Thompson as well. He's good side, number to number speed. You know, he can cover the back end. Whether or not he might be a bit more of a long shot to make it, but I mean, Quinton Morris would be the one I would pin my flag to. I think that's the one I would say he's definitely making your team because he just looks Buffalo Bills to me, and he's good. I think I don't know how much Bowling Green football you guys watched, but if you saw him, I think you'd be quietly impressed. There's a guy who got drafted called Tommy Tremble, and I think he went to the Panthers, and everyone's saying he's the best blocking tight end there. But you watch him; he's got the traits to be a pass catcher as well. Quinton Morris is like a light version of Tommy Tremble. I think he can make your roster. I think he can have an impact in the NFL.
Awesome. Great. So before you go, just quickly, obviously, let people know what your podcast and where they can find you, and obviously any reviews you're doing on the draft if they want to get other teams ideas about other teams.
You must still get who's listening to this wanting to talk about other teams.
Everyone know about Jets and Dolphins and their
that's fair.
They suck, and then you tell us that they did very well.
I did bring their notes just in case you wanted to snipe at them. But no, you can catch me. My name's Simon Carroll. I'm on Twitter at NFL Draft Sci. Obviously, I would really recommend you go and look at the touchdown.co.uk, or follow us on Twitter at the Touchdown NFL. It's a fantastic UK-based website, mostly because I'm not the only one doing stuff on there. But we are planning on doing probably team by teams reviews of their drafts. Maybe just like their off season, like a bit more free agency and UDFAs and things like that, and just picking out a couple of names that will make an impact. So if you do have other allegiances, check that out. And of course, listen to the Collapsing Pocket podcast if you like a bit of football with you swearing in your beer, because that's pretty much what it's all about. But obviously, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I really enjoy doing this. I do it with a couple of teams, and the Bills is always one of my favorite ones. We've got a sneaky few Bills fans who listen to our podcast, big followers.
Right.
Buffalo Bill, he calls himself, from Ireland. He's the boy. He's one of our boys. He's our Irish correspondent, we call him. He's a big fan. Hopefully, he's listening to this too, and he'll appreciate the shout out.
Get him all pushed over here. We'll take him on as well. No, but I mean, Simon, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
No, I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.